I mean, I don't think that any product is fully ethical because if you're
Okay.
creating a product, I mean, if you don't do anything, then you're probably the most
Yeah.
ethical because you're not creating any waste, you're not using up any resources. Um, but the way I think about ethical fashion is like, the raw materials, like what kind of raw materials are you using? And then um, what is the labor process involved in making the product, the labor, and also the how the process of making the product itself. And then thirdly, what happens to the product at the end of its useful life cycle. I think that we need to look at all of them. So you can't just look at materials and then ignore the labor and how people are being treated and how the product is actually made. You can't ignore that. And then you also can't just look at labor and materials and process and ignore what happens to the product at the end of its useful life, you know? So you kind of need to think about all of those things to make sure that you are treating people well, you're using as sustainable materials as you can, and the process of making the product is not damaging the environment or harming people. And then that the product is not sitting in a landfill and going to take 500 years to decompose. That you're trying to make sure that the product is reusable or recyclable or biodegradable or as much as possible even made from recycled products, etc. That's kind of how I look at what we do. And so for me, it was very important that whatever materials we use is sustainable or natural or biodegradable. And then, of course, paying people fairly for their work and making sure that, I mean, most of our artisans, or actually 100% of them, work from home. So they
Fantastic.
work from home and so that they can look after their families. We do have some disabled artisans, so they can't leave home. It's easiest for them to work from home. So out of all of our products, we had one product that was made from plastic strips. And that was our Nelly bag range. And so for a couple of years when we made that bag, I really struggled because I was like, of all of the products in our range, this is the only product that I don't know, how our customers are throwing the bag, or it's plastic. It's not, it's not biodegradable. So it's damaging the environment. I started looking for someone who could help us recycle the bags, and so we started a program encouraging our customers to return the bags because they last for about 5 years or so, and then they kind of start like shedding a little bit and kind of
Okay.
breaking. So we started a circular program where our customers could return the bag and we recycle it and they get like a discount. But I couldn't find anyone to help us recycle the bags. And that took us a few years. And funny story, long story short, that's how I met my husband because he runs a social enterprise called Sea Monkey Project and they build plastic recycling machines.
Oh
So
my goodness.
I met him at a pop-up and I was like, "Hey, can you guys help us recycle this bag?" And and then COVID happened and I lost touch. But like after COVID, we got in touch again and I was like kind of bugging him. I'm like, "Can you please see if you can help us recycle this bag?" And that's kind of, what happened and we started talking and yeah, and then got married. I think in thinking about ethical fashion, I mean, it's like if you look at food and how like the slow food movement has grown and how long it has taken people to realize why it's important to support farmers and why it's important to try and have naturally grown organic food and how it impacts our lives. I think the ethical fashion movement is also on that same trajectory, but it's still going to take a long time. I mean, because we still have so many products from clothing to things that we buy every day that is full of plastic, that is full of
Yeah.
synthetic materials. And we don't really think about it because we think we can just throw it away and it doesn't affect us. But, a lot more studies are now showing that wearing polyester is impacting our bodies, so all of our workout clothes, like all that spandex, that, all those tights and everything, our yoga clothes, whatever. It's like, if it's made out of polyester, it could be causing infertility. We need to start thinking about what we're putting on our bodies as well. It's no longer about, oh, it's just clothing, I'm not eating it, it doesn't make a difference. It is impacting us. All those synthetic chemicals or whatever are getting into our skin and damaging our endocrine systems, etc. So sometimes I feel like, whoa, I'm telling people to go back to the industrial ages, you know, or, when people used to make things by hand and we didn't consume like 500 pieces of clothing a year per person, like, because you don't actually need that much. So it's kind of going back to like wearing linen and cotton and natural things. I mean, I used to do that when I was living in New York. I used to go to the H&M that was in front of St. Patrick's Cathedral. Literally, I used to go to church and then walk across the street and go shopping. And and I would come back with bags of clothes and I'd be like, oh, it was only like $15-$20. It doesn't matter if I like don't like it, or, it tears and I just throw it away. I did that myself. And I don't know if it's just youth or, or just lack of knowledge, but I didn't know all of this then and how damaging it was and how the people that made the clothing or products that I was buying were not treated well, and that if I buy products made out of polyester or nylon, I'm damaging my health. Yeah, so it was kind of like, learning all of these things. So I think ethical fashion is, growing, but it's not of prime importance yet because you still have a lot of brands that are doing very well selling cheap polyester stuff. Even big brands, like, not many of their clothes are made out of, it's hard to find really beautiful, well made cotton and, linen. So brands themselves need to look beyond their shareholders. And, I think we live in a world where, I mean, the fact that our GDP, right, of a country is one of the biggest components is consumption.
Yeah.
So when consumption goes down, the GDP goes down. So it's almost like we're built on a structure in the world where it's like if you don't consume, then everyone thinks that life is going to be bad. Companies are incentivized by shareholders who want returns, and the returns are usually monetary. There are a lot of things that I think need to change for us as a world to be more sustainable and in a more like a better path.
Yeah, that's super helpful. I think that we've in past episodes, I've touched on a friend who shared the importance of ethical fashion here in the States. She's very passionate about that, and she works with a lot of Western brands that are ethical. And we talked about synthetic fibers and microplastics in another episode and how that affects women's fertility and infertility. So it's super interesting that you're bringing kind of those thoughts back up here. I love how Earth Air is working with all sorts of people from all over the world. And the vision of Earth Air is to build nations and generations as heirs of the earth. I think that was what your vision statement was on your website, right?
Yeah. So actually, unfortunately, had to, stop working with communities outside of Malaysia. Why?
Okay.
Because I realized that working with a large group of people from around the world meant that we were having shallower impact. So it's like we were spreading ourselves too thin. So what I decided was, we should focus on Malaysia, but make our impact deeper, rather than trying to be like working with like 10 different countries and having like less impact. Why not focus on Malaysia? And also, I realized that when people come to shop in Malaysia, they don't want to buy something from Cambodia or Thailand or
That's true.
Vietnam,
Yeah.
or they want to buy something that is Malaysian and made in Malaysia. Because to be honest, now when you travel in Southeast Asia or Asia, a lot of the places have the same thing. Like every single like market you go to and you're like, wait, where is this made? Because I see this everywhere in Bali, in Chiang Mai, and and so it like I realized there's actually a need for authentic, locally made products. But yeah, so we work just with Malaysian artisans at the moment.